Go. Okay, once again, we talked about counselor, we talked about psychologists, psychiatrists now. We talk about the school system. You have a school psychologist, you have a school counselor, and you have educational psychologists. School psychologists test and assess students. Oh, I suppose you have a student or a child or an individual who you think may have a learning disability, so you send them to the school psychologist, they give them a better test. Yes, that individual does have learning. Or suppose you expect the child is a genius, same thing. You take them to school psychologist, and basically they'll diagnose them or assess them and say, yes, is they a genius or not a genius. So testing and assessing students, that's the main thing school psychologists do. School counselor, I like using the term child advocate. In other words, the school counselor's job is to protect the child from the system, or sometimes protect the child from their own parents. Okay, anybody out there read the book Child Called It? That was considered one of the worst cases of child abuse in the state of California. I think it might have been 1980s or so, 1990s maybe. And the level of abuse, I had to read the book like that. Oh man, what's gonna happen next? Oh, that's horrible. It's really intense. The level of abuse he receives is really intense. And in real life, or normally what happens is, if a teacher suspects a child is being abused, they'll refer them to the counselor, and the counselor will make that decision. Should I call Child Protective Services? Should I call the police department or whatever? Or a lot of times they usually talk to the parent first, but usually it's the school counselor's job is to protect the child, or also protect the child from the system. Think about yourself. You ever have a teacher who did not like you? Imagine an 8-year-old kid against a 30 or 40-year-old adult, okay, who has a college degree. That teacher could literally ruin that child's life. Okay, example, let's say you're a counselor, you walk in the room, you walk in the building, you see the same child sitting outside the same classroom every day. That's a problem. That's a problem. For number one, the child's probably not learning much. Number two, the child's self-esteem is being destroyed. And number three, the child's not going to be able to bond with other children. Okay, and so a counselor would go and talk, hey, Miss So-and-so, I noticed that Joaquin's been sitting in the hall. Let's see if we can work something out. Okay, sometimes they can put them in a different class, or have some type of plan, or maybe hook them with a tutor, or some type of intervention. That's the counselor's job, protect that child from the system, as well as protect that child from other children. If you ever have a conflict with your child in school and the system, number one, don't go alone, but make sure you talk to the counselor before you go to that conference meeting, because that's the counselor's job, is to protect your child from that school system, okay, if that's the case, okay. Educational psychology. Educational psychologists, basically curriculum, teaching methods, curriculum, in terms of what's the best way to teach, or what method works best with a certain population. Historically, this is a really exciting time to go into educational psychology, because everything's up for grabs. I'm sure you heard the term No Child Left Behind, Achievement Gap. There's other programs out there where you have some kids who have money, wealthy kids are really doing well in school, where kids who are becoming poor and disenfranchised neighborhoods are doing really poorly in school. So that gap, that's what we're referring to as a gap. So I say, if you come up with a new method of teaching, okay, or new tools to come up and work, or even some teaching methods that can work with that population, you can do really good in that field. Okay, and that's education. So education psychology looks at curriculum, okay, and teaching methods. Then you have forensic psychologists. Criminal justice system. How to make the criminal justice system more efficient. You can do that through rehabilitation, you can do that for crime prevention, or you can do that for even apprehending a criminal. All those, if you ever watch these police shows, Bones, what's some of those shows? CSI. Almost every other episode, they have a psychologist come in and talk, maybe for a few minutes, maybe just before the commercial, or someone's doing this, and then they say, they get a profile of them. Well, that's the forensic psychologist. Okay, community psychology. Community psychology is, guess it started in the 1980s. Up before 1970 or so, only people with money, upper middle class, and wealthy people went to counseling. And so, goal of community psychology, let's basically provide counseling and mental health service to people who ordinarily wouldn't go. Okay, and so oftentimes, how many working class people can afford $90 an hour every week? And see where community psychology comes in. Well, you can't afford 90. Let's talk about 20, or what can you afford? They've often done a sliding scale. Also, community service, key youth and family service is probably one of the best examples of community psychology I've seen. Where they have life skills class for teen mothers. In other words, one of the number one reasons girls drop out of high school is get pregnant. So they have every week they go and meet and they teach them how to fill out job applications, how to apply for money, how to do other things, how to get access to resources. They also have anger management for youth. It was started actually under the Clinton administration called late night basketball, but it's more than just basketball. I mean, all the junior highs in Kent are open from after school till late at night. And it works way better than curfews because you know where your kid is. They have out of uniform police officers playing basketball with them, arguing who's going to win the Super Bowl or who's a better quarterback. You have trained psychotherapists or chaperones. They can get help with their homework. They have arts and crafts. Okay, so it's really a program. Okay, one of the problems of community psychology is tax cuts. Okay, because most community psychology programs are nonprofit.